On today's Locked On Bama, we're going to go over a couple of guys on Jimmy Stein's countdown. We're also going to have a little fun because we're going to have a flashback to a Michigan State game and maybe some message board history. All that today on Locked On Bama.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, this episode is brought to everybody by Bird Dogs because we love bird dogs. Literal bird dogs, but also Bird Dogs, the clothing apparel brand. I just got an email from them. They're starting to sell polos now, and I'm going to get me a handful of those mothers too. But, Jimmy, I think where we start today is on your countdown with Mr. Monkell Goodwine. That's a name that sounds like it belongs in Game of Thrones, but I'm going to put his picture up now. He is an intimidating looking dude. He was a 5-star. He was a guy a lot of people thought may contribute a little bit more last year. He only played in one game, I think, last year against Auburn, oddly. But I suspect we'll see him on the field a lot more this year. And tell us about him.
I think we'll certainly see him more. He's a good example of the depth of the roster. I mean, when you're talking about that defensive line group, you know, it's not stocked with stars. I think we could stand to get a little better there in terms of the frontline talent. But the overall depth is incredible. There's 15 defensive linemen on scholarship. That's quite a few. You're only going to play 6 or 7 guys at the most. I'm not sure Monkell is yet in that top 6 group, that top 7 group, but he's awfully close to it. I think he'll be in some pretty heated competition to get into that group. And if he falls just short, then he becomes, I think, one of the best players on the team who doesn't play. And I know that's not a label that any kid on the team wants to have necessarily, but at Nick Saban's Alabama, it's a pretty big deal. And I think it's a fun discussion every year. Who's the best player on the team that doesn't play with the first rotation? And Monkell, I think he's going to be a strong candidate for that type title this year because he is a good player. He had an interesting spring. He did spend a lot of time with the ones during the spring, but we had guys hurt and out. And he's probably was playing with the ones largely due to that. Thought he did okay on A-Day. Again, this is a good player for a lineman. He's still fairly young. We're heading into his 3rd year in the program. I think for him, in terms of is he ever going to be a significant player to Alabama, I think next spring, sort of the do or die time for him because next spring we'll have players moving on. Tim Smith, he's likely to move on to the NFL. We know Justin Eboigbe will be moving on to the NFL for sure. And then we got some guys that might clear out with 15 guys on that defensive line. That would not be a surprising spot to see some guys portal out in December who are just looking for snaps. Hopefully one of them won't be Monkell because he's got such significant upside. He's also a great kid, a natural leader. I think Monkell's going to be a good player at Alabama. I really do. I'm just not sure we'll see a ton of him this fall, except in end-of-game situation.
Yeah, but if you don't see a ton of him this fall, I mean, it's 2 years. I think that's the shelf life for people before they get in the portal now. I mean, that would be the norm. I mean, look, I'm not saying it can happen, but if – and again, I see a lot of positives. Everybody wants to talk about, well, they're not getting any playing time, and I see some positives to people staying at Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, maybe even LSU, something like that, and still practicing against the best, even if you don't get your playing time until later on, because you're getting ready for the pros versus going to, I don't know, Michigan State, who we'll talk about later, becoming a little bit more of a household name, but you're not as developed.
Right. I think that's ultimately one of the sell jobs Alabama's going to have. And if at the end of the year he's lost his patience and wants to play, hopefully it's a situation where Alabama can show him, hey, with the Eboigbe move, I mean, you were one spot short of moving into the rotation, and Eboigbe's moving on. Tim Smith is moving on, such and such is portaling out. So you're in now. Hopefully that'll be kind of the sales job in, because I do think he's a good player. It's Nick Saban's Alabama. We have players that don't play every week who are good players. There's just better players ahead of them, or older players. Maybe Monkell Goodwine is going to prove to be a better player than some of the guys who are playing right now down the road. It's a developmental sport, developmental position, particularly at the defensive line, where kids have to get bigger and stronger before they play every week.
Yeah, I'm pulling for him. I just feel like, I love to see these highly rated kids come in and do well and get their minutes. And I think it bodes well to get more highly rated kids. Not that Alabama's having any kind of trouble recruiting folks, but, if you stay here and you put your, pay your dues, I think that, good things will eventually happen. Jimmy, I know it's a little bit early for this, but I'm still going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody about bird dogs. These bird dogs, these pet, look, they make you look good. I'm going to show. Can you see these, Jimmy? I know they may be a little wrinkly, but they've been packed. I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
I only see them. They look like ones I wear all the time.
I love these things. Bird dogs, stretch khaki shorts designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. And Lord knows we need to look sculpted. Bird dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better, and they're actually less expensive. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. You can, wear these practically anywhere. I mean, they're good looking, but they're also sort of laid back. So whatever you want to do, go get you some bird dogs. I'm telling you, these things work so awesome. I can't stop wearing them. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege. Enter promo code LockedOnCollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You will love these things. And as I said, they are I got an email the other day. They're starting to sell polos. And this is something new that they're doing. And you want to go check those out because they look super cool. And I'm going to go get me some. On the next Locked On Bama, which will be tomorrow at some point, we're going to be doing even more Jimmy Stein countdown stuff. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we got a commitment for somebody like a Grant Nelson. That'd be awesome. I know his visit went pretty well. Jimmy, if you want to just wrap up anything you've heard about his visit before we move on to Jaeden Roberts, go ahead.
Yeah, obviously he got the full court press, I guess is the best way to put it when you're talking about how important Grant Nelson is to this program. Look, losing Bediako was a surprise. That's from inside the program. They were as surprised as we were. They believed from conversations with Team Bediako that he was only interested in leaving if he was going to be drafted. They did not believe he would be drafted. I've yet to see his name in any mock draft anywhere. I don't believe he's going to be drafted, and he left anyway. So that was a real surprise to them. So now you're having to go to the portal a little later than you would have liked. Had you known all along you needed a 5, they would have been, talking to kids a while back. But here's the blessing that fell out of the sky. That's Grant Nelson, because not only is he a perfect replacement, he didn't get into the portal until late. So Grant Nelson gets into the portal late, about the same exact time Alabama starts looking, and he's a perfect fit. And would be a great replacement. Again, a little different than Charles. Charles, a defensive specialist, need a little work on the offensive end. Grant, an offensive specialist, needs a little work on the defensive end. If these guys were as good on both sides of the court, then we knew Charles would have been gone to the NBA, and Grant Nelson would have also stayed in the draft. Obviously, they're not perfect just yet, but again, it's college, it's a developmental sport. We think Grant Nelson could make huge strides in Alabama's program, which is pretty good at preparing kids for the NBA. As we all know from the past 2 or 3 years, we got Brandon Miller and Noah Clowney, almost certain first-round picks in this upcoming draft. So real interesting times for Alabama. Grant is supposed to leave Tuscaloosa today and head to Arkansas. If he does, it's hold your breath time. If he doesn't and says, I'm not going to make that Arkansas trip, we can start really looking forward to basketball season around here.
Yeah, he's a piece of work, man. I really like this kid a lot. I hope he ends up in Tuscaloosa. So let's talk a little Jaeden Roberts right now. And I'm going to put a picture up, and the picture is going to be a little different because the only good picture I could find of Jaeden Roberts to put up was him in this Auburn shirt with an Auburn hat. Now, you say, why is he doing that? He's wearing that because he was committing to Auburn, and Alabama flipped him. This is a monstrous human being. This really is a tremendously big person. And I know that, like, among big people, he's a big person. He's like DJ Fluker, just like, okay, he can be among other football players, and you're like, yeah, but he's different. Now, Jaeden Roberts what do you think about him and his playing time this year? I'm ready for him to really burst on the scene.
Yeah, he really is. Well, he's up here at 58, which doesn't sound super high, but when you consider all the players that are below him and some really good players, so you're talking about 31 players now below him on the ranking, so he's moving up. The big difference is, and it's interesting that we do Monkell Goodwine, who's a reserve defensive lineman, and Jaeden Roberts, a reserve offensive lineman. It's funny that we're doing them back to back because Monkell is probably not a guy we're going to see much of this fall because even though on the first team on the defensive line, we play 6 or 7 guys, we rotate. You don't have to be just a starter to get on the field. We rotate with some amount of depth. Monkell's probably just on the outside looking in. Here's Jaeden Roberts, who is solidly a second-team player. There's like no doubt. He went into spring, second-team right guard, left spring, second-team right guard. Almost a stone-cold lock to remain at that second-team guard position in the fall. But we don't rotate on the offensive line. On the offensive line, the first team, tackle to tackle, plays the whole game until Nick Saban determines, okay, game's out of reach, game's safe. We'll empty the bench, and then the second team offensive line goes in sort of late in the game. Jaden's going to be with that group this fall in terms of what I'm projecting, and that means we'll see him play most weeks. It's just going to be an end of game situation. The interesting thing about Jaeden, much like Monkell, is the opportunity that opens. You know, the doors open for him next spring because next spring. Darren Dalcourt will have cycled out at offensive guard. J.C. Latham almost certainly going pro. So there's 2 spots open in the starting lineup right there. Don't count out Jaeden Roberts from winning one of those spots. I'm not predicting that he will, but I will certainly assure you he's going to be right in the thick of it. He can play he played tackle last year. He's playing guard this year. So there's some positional versatility there. Luke brought up Fluker. I think Fluker's a great comparison for him. Now he's sort of a DJ Fluker light in the sense that I don't think he's quite Fluker, but he's a lot like him. And if you guys remember, before Fluker ended up being like the 11th pick in the draft, he was redshirted. As a matter of fact, he wasn't within a mile of being ready to play when he showed up. And then in year 2, he was able to play, and he was just sort of fine. He still wasn't in as good a playing shape as he needed to be a great player in this league. Year 3, boom, Fluker was absolutely ready and proved it with being the 11th pick in the draft. Now, Jaeden Roberts, 1 year behind, right? Next year for him, next season, 2024, that'll be year 4 for him. You know, everything clicked for Fluker in year 3. Might be year 4 for Jaeden Roberts. Like I said, not quite Fluker, but he's a good player. If we had a rash of injuries, God forbid, I think he could play this fall and be okay. We would be okay with him even this fall, even though he's not quite, I don't think as good as he's going to get in college, but he's doing well. It was always going to take some time, like it does with most offensive linemen, like it did with Fluke. So I think he's on track to be a really good player at Alabama. Now, just Monkell Goodwine, it's a matter of when does he get that opportunity.
Jimmy, very sorry I had my Twitter handle and name up under your name the entire time for that. I just wanted credit for that brilliant soliloquy.
Well, it could spearhead you all the way to a Locked On
free t-shirt.
Locked On Smarter guy.
Okay, there we go. Let's go ahead and take another break. When we come back, I just want to go into a flashback of an old Michigan State game. And we're back. It's ironic, Jimmy, that you're wearing green today because we are going to talk about Michigan State. Look, not everybody's going to get into this segment. I get it. But if y'all will hang with us, I think this is kind of fun. Alabama, Michigan State 2010, I think arguably is Alabama's most dominant performance in any game of the Saban era. You want to talk Notre Dame national championship? That one's certainly more high profile. And that one certainly had its moments. 2010 Bama, Michigan State was one of those games that could have been 80-0. Now, Auburn 2012 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama beat the brakes off of them. It was never a contest, but that Auburn team had laid down. They were done. I don't include that one quite as much. Michigan State showed up that felt like they had a shot. In fact, I remember people thinking, Alabama may not even come out to play very much just because they've got so many guys that are going to be going pro. But your buddies over at On 3, Tim Watts, very wisely put up there was a very famous message board thread from the Michigan State board about the game, and it just sort of showed how they went from having a little hope to being utterly embarrassed, and then just frankly going into the fetal position. It was really quite just an awesome thread. Anybody who's known 3, I recommend you go check it out. But I mean, they are talking about they're saying things like Alabama has pros at almost every spot with 5 stars. We've got a bunch of 2 stars. Why is this even a college football game? Somebody actually said this, and this is back when Alabama was, make their A quit. This is, a lot of people are going to love this. One of the posts was, this is what's wrong with college football and why I'll never be on par with the NFL. Make that any college sport, as a matter of fact. A full team of 5-star recruits against a team of 2- and 3-star recruits. I wonder who will win. What a surprise. Give a team a salary cap, all 1st and 2nd round picks, and put them up against 5th and 6th round picks and see what happens. I mean, that's just awesome. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I miss that. I miss one of them.
Michigan State was ranked, I think, 7th.
Yeah.
They're acting like they had no chance and they're a terrible team. They finished 2nd in the Big Ten. They had 10 wins and finished 7th or 8th in the country. And they're acting like that they're some high school team that was forced at gunpoint to march up and play against some the number 1 college team who, by the way, had won no more games than they did.
That's right.
I think, as a matter of fact, when I remember now clearly, in that game, Michigan State went into it 10-2. Alabama went into it 9-3.
Yeah, we were 9-3 because we finished 10-3. Yeah, we lost to Auburn, LSU, and South Carolina that year. And just some other little notes from it. One of them said, I think the Alabama punter took off his pads. The next guy said he didn't even bring his pads. And one of them said, I think their punter is currently drinking around the world at Epcot.
Which is so funny because the day before that game, I drank around the world at Epcot.
Did you really?
Before that game.
People were saying, when does the mercy rule kick in? Time to put on a movie or something. Please they said now it's 3rd and 33 miles. I think they ended up with like big time negative yardage on rushing.
Right.
Let's see.
We sacked their quarterback about 14 times. Here's another thing. They played 3 or 4 quarterbacks. At the end of the game, they were so sick of their quarterbacks getting hit that they ended the game with a receiver playing quarterback because they just were tired of their quarterback getting sacked. The starting quarterback that had a very short day was Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, that's the Kirk Cousins who's making $1 gazillion in the NFL right now, by the way.
Yeah, they took him out to basically protect his pro career.
I mean, somebody said, this is getting out of hand. An Alabama defensive lineman just popped out of my TV and threw me for a 10-yard loss behind my couch. I mean, it was just great stuff. I mean, those are the glory days. I mean, and again, I love Alabama now. I love Bryce Young, love, Jahmyr Gibbs, love Devontae Smith, all that stuff. But that was the time. I mean, that was before we knew what was coming down the tracks. I mean,
it was the birth not of the Saban dynasty. The Saban dynasty had already been born.
Yeah.
But it was the birth of the completely dominant Alabama. Because let's be honest, I'm not trying to talk down that 09 national championship team in any way. They were the national champions, the best team in college football that year. But the 09 team, half of the lineup was recruited by the previous regime. And while Saban did an incredible job of developing those guys into really good college football players, they wouldn't have been recruited by Nick Saban. I mean, I'm not going to name names, but there's several guys in that 09 starting lineup that would not have been offered by Nick Saban and his staff. Now you move forward 1 year to 2010, virtually every single player on the team is now a Saban guy. Every one of them part of that 08 class, the 09 class, even the true freshman, the 2010 class. That 2010 team was built by Saban for Saban. The problem that season is a lot of people don't remember well, but that team was absolutely beset by injury. There were multiple players hurt every single week. I remember one game when Trent Richardson, Mark Ingram, and Eddie Lacy were all hurt. They all had to play hurt. I think it was against Tennessee. First team, second team, third team running back, all hurt. I think Lacy had to play the most because he was hurt the least. I also think that was Marcel Darius played the whole season with a high ankle sprain, and so did Courtney Upshaw. 2010 Michigan State was the first game that Darius and Upshaw both were healthy. That was the first game all year both were healthy. Look what happened.
I mean, and you know, we probably won't see a lot of performances like that anymore because they're going to be. I mean, now, I guess ironically, Alabama did have a lot of guys play in the Sugar Bowl this year against Kansas State, but I would also argue that 2010 team where you knew Julio Jones going round one, Mark Ingram's going round one, round two, Marcel Darius going round one. God, they just had that team had so many dudes. I could make the case that's the best team to never win a national championship.
I know this.
Drake Kirkpatrick.
We get so understandably focused on a final result, and I know what happened, and I don't want to rehash it. But Auburn was the national champions that year. Alabama led them 24-0. And I know that we rightfully focus on what happened after that and the disaster. But let's think about that for a few minutes. Auburn was the best team in the country. They won the national championship. Alabama was beating them 24-0. That's how good that Alabama team could be. But then we all know, like it's college football. Like General Nealon at Tennessee said once, college football games are lost. They're not won. And then Alabama promptly lost the game more so than Auburn just lined up and started, punching us in the face. Alabama, the Ingram fumble kind of started the comeback. But the whole point being that Alabama team, when everything was rolling, was absolutely dominant. And the Michigan State message board to tell you that.
Yeah, and I mean, still the best scene from that was when Eddie Lacy breaks free as the third string running back for a long touchdown. He's looking around like, would one of you SOBs please tackle me so Nick Saban doesn't yell at me when I get back to the sideline? I mean, it was pretty funny. I highly recommend everybody go check that out on YouTube. It's really one of the more fun games of the Saban era. Marquise Mays has a big touchdown. Julio Jones scores on a reverse, I think. And that was Julio when Julio was Julio too. I mean, Julio's sort of a shell of his former self now in the pros. I don't even know. I don't think he's been picked up yet. Boy, at that moment, people were like, that dude's a dude's dude. So
yeah, McElroy also played really well that day. And sometimes people forget McElroy was drafted. I think it was a 7th round draft choice. And I think by the end of 2010, that was sort of Greg McElroy at his best too. He had really developed into a guy that was going to get a shot in the NFL, and people forget that as well. But McElroy played really well that day too, extremely efficient, something like 14 out of 17 off the top of my head.
All right, buddy. That's going to do it for today's pod. We'll be back tomorrow with more countdown stuff. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.